Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. The first offering of the platform is a public speaking course called Teach the Geek to Speak. To learn more about it, you can go to teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Mike Roberts, and he founded the San Diego Code School, and he meant for it to be an affordable means to teach people the art of coding, or maybe the science of coding, whichever one it is. Anyway, the Code School now serves as a place to teach people or to place people in apprenticeship programs at companies, and I'm curious to find out how that all works. So some questions I might have are, how does the Code School train or does the Code School train the students and send them to companies, or how are the apprentices different from interns that companies currently have, and what's the success rate with similar programs? I'm interested to find out the answers to all those questions. Welcome to Teach the Geek interviews, Mike.
Thanks. I'm super glad to be here, Neil. Thanks for inviting me.
You got it. So first question. I know that there's a whole bunch of coding schools out there currently, but when it comes to your own training, do you come from, I guess, more classically trained, a computer science program, or are you the graduate of a coding school yourself?
Oh man, so that's a good question. So I started coding when I was about 12 or 13, so it's been about 31 years. I did it mostly as a hobby, so I would say I'm self-taught first. I took the 10-year plan through college, so I eventually did get a bachelor's degree in computer science, but it definitely was not something that was the gatekeeper for me. I had been coding for a really long time. It actually took me more than just getting the degree, but it took me a while to recognize that actually I could actually get paid to learn how to apply those skills and become an engineer. And so I would say just the second half of that 30 years, I've done it professionally. So I'm definitely not a child of the code school era. When I learned how to code, it was way back in the day with like GW Basic and Turbo Pascal. So that's what I cut my teeth on.
Nice. So when it comes to, I guess, the San Diego Code School, where did the idea for that come from?
So it was kind of born out of necessity. I was at a previous code school, taught there for a couple of years. When they closed, I decided to get a license because I had rewritten a lot of the curriculum for that program to start another program and basically begin a new chapter. And so I formed it basically because the only other alternative was to lose all of the learning that had taken place through that initial experience at a code school. And this was the best way I could think of to leverage it and continue to be in the space.
Okay. So when I first learned about San Diego Code School, it was a place where people come, and they pay their money, they learn how to code, and then you help them get, jobs at various places. But I guess the scope of the code school has changed a bit. So how is that? What is that? I guess why was the change of scope necessary?
So we're always looking for better ways to serve our students. And it's just a natural part of the cycle where we evaluate what makes the most sense for our students. And I was noticing a lot of students were still struggling with trying to hold down a part-time job or the long and sometimes stressful experience of being out of work while they're studying and retraining for a new skill. And so we just reimagined what would this whole model look like if we approached it from a more student-centered approach in terms of the business model. And it started to kind of align with what we were seeing in the apprenticeship space. And as part of an initiative through San Diego Tech Hub last year, I sort of took on the task of creating a playbook for apprenticeships. And the initial idea was to create a document that we could pass off to other code schools or other employers and basically say, here's how you could execute and create your own apprenticeship program. Well, in the process of doing that, someone really smart told me, you should probably not do that because that's a terrible idea. And she basically said, if you want people to adopt apprenticeships, you have to provide a path for them to do it, not just the document, but instead a service that can help them do that. And so we decided to kind of, eat our own dog food, and in the process of creating that playbook, try and go through the process of becoming a registered apprenticeship program, and then sort of pivoted our business model away from a tuition-based model and towards apprenticeship. Everything that we were learning as we were starting to go through the process made it more and more sense that this is a great way to mitigate a lot of the challenges that students have as they go through an immersive experience. So it provides them pay from day one, so they don't have to worry about quitting their job. It provides them an opportunity for them to get paid work experience for a full year. And then we can help them transition into mid and large size companies once they have that 1 year of solid experience under their belt.
Oh, okay. So exactly how does it, I'm trying to imagine how it works. So a person goes into a company from day one, and do they learn how how to code from the company, or do they learn from the code school?
So our model differs from some ways that apprenticeships are delivered. There's really kind of, I guess, two prevailing models today for technical apprenticeships. The first is somewhat like you described. A company will decide that they're going to hire and employ 5 to 10 apprentices. It has to make enough sense for them to make an investment of bringing in like a program designer and create the opportunity. So they usually want to make sure they have a good size of people available. We knew in San Diego, there's not that much of a demand or appetite for early career developers. And so we knew if we wanted to be in this space, we were going to have to do some of that heavy lifting ourselves. So the alternative model to that is that you basically create your own team, and you could create like an agency style business, or you could create really any entity that could use software engineers. And then you hire apprentices to work at that organization, and that's how you use it to kind of fund the apprenticeship program. So our model is really similar to the way you would do it if you were a large institution like an Intuit or ServiceNow or Sony. It's just we have a nonprofit that acts as that employer, and then we provide the training and the services to make sure that they can wrap people up and get them to the point where they're ready to be then transitioned into a full-time role, typically somewhere else, like at one of those larger companies.
Okay. Do the people that go through the apprenticeship program have to stay at these companies for a specific amount of time, or can they leave at any time?
No, I mean, again, we want to think about this definitely from the perspective of a student. And so we didn't want there to be any strings attached. There's no cost to students to participate in this program. There's no commitment. So if they decide that it just doesn't work out for them and it's not something they want to pursue, or if they decide when a company presents an offer to them, they don't want to take that offer, they want to go somewhere else, they're free to do all of those things. There's no restriction. We entirely want to be advocates for students and people transitioning into this field. And so at any point in time, an employer could say, hey, we're interested in hiring one of your developers. Instead of them using our pay-as-you-go service, which basically leverages the talent of the apprentices, they could make an offer and say, hey, we want to hire one of these folks before the 12 months are up. And then we'll just work with that employer and make sure that the student can complete their apprenticeship program as they're working at that company. So the student will still get the benefit of completing their apprenticeship program. They're just going from one employer to another employer.
Okay, interesting. So the apprentices are typically at the company for 12 months. Is that what you?
They'll be at one of our employers for 12 months. And then once they're done, then they will be placed with companies. We'll try and match them up with employers. And really, again, the reason why we're pretty confident that this is going to not be as much of a challenge is that San Diego Code School has a really good track record of training people. Over the course of our first year and a half, we were getting roughly 90% of our students that graduated our program placed within 6 months. So we figured if we can get people in jobs in 4 months, then it's no problem for us to get people into jobs in 12 months.
Okay, but they have to stay for the 12 months though, right?
Not necessarily. So if, let's say a student decides that like they've come on board as an apprentice, and this is not the ideal scenario, but we know this is going to happen. Like this is the real world. Someone may decide that like they have to leave and they have to go maybe take care of a family member, or they get sick, or something else in life occurs and they're not able to complete the apprenticeship program. They don't owe us anything. It's not like we're going to send them a bill and say, oh, you owe this much for training, etc. We hope that they would be able to return and at some point complete, or at some point we can continue to support them on their journey to become a software engineer. But we understand that for some percentage of people, they're not going to make it to the end. And so again, we don't want there to be any sort of like anything held over their head. There's no obligation for them to go to work for a specific employer. They may decide after the program that they want to do some freelance work, or they want to take an opportunity and create an opportunity for themselves somewhere else. So that's perfect. We just want to make sure that people get an opportunity to learn the skills that we feel are going to be relevant in the coming years.
So for the companies that you're currently working with in that 12-month program, what type of industries are these companies from?
So right now we have partnerships in place with 2 fairly large service providers. So one of them is ServiceNow. So ServiceNow will be providing some training for our apprentices. and getting them those like certifications they'll need for ServiceNow implementations and integration work. We also have a partner, Kaizen, that is a CRM, and we will be certifying our apprentices to be able to do implementations and integrations of Kaizen. And even if they move on and they decide to get a job implementing something that's different, maybe like a HubSpot or a Salesforce, they will already attained transferable skills, and they can very quickly get up to speed with implementing or working on those other ecosystems. So we really want to make sure we're focused on partnering with companies that have either a very strong presence where there's lots of tech jobs or in demand for that particular skill, or there's transferable skills that apprentices will learn while they're working on those platforms. Another example of a partner that we're working with here locally is a company called BD. And so BD is a medical devices company. Their team mostly works in C#. So we're going to be providing them apprentices that can work on their C# projects and deliver value for them. And so again, that will be like an on-demand service where they need some additional help working through items in their backlog. And so we can provide on-demand talent for them to be able to get more projects done. Think of it kind of like an offshore agency, but instead, like we're feeding the local ecosystem. We're getting people in San Diego employed and working the same way they would if they placed that work offshore.
Okay, so ServiceNow, Kaizen, and BD. If you had a wish list, what kind of other companies would you want to be a part of the program?
We're big fans of Amazon, so we're always looking forward to creating an opportunity for us to be in the Amazon ecosystem, whether that's AWS or like in San Diego, we have the Amazon Fresh product. So it'd be great to be able to create some new pipelines into larger organizations like that.
Okay, and the training that the apprentices get before they enter these companies, how long does that typically take?
So we can usually get most people ramped up within a period of, I'd say 2 to 3 months, where they're ready for billable hours and they're ready to be working on client projects. It will vary depending on the skill set that the apprentice has when they come into the program. So some will have some previous experience. So we've got some graduates of our code school program, the tuition-based program, and they'll be great in terms of coming in and being able to very quickly leverage their existing skill base and learn some new skills. We will also be hiring apprentices that have no technical background whatsoever and putting them through our bootcamp curriculum first, and then putting them on the platform specific training. And then at that point, they'll be ready to actually be working billable hours.
What type of titles do the people that come from your program end up getting once they finish the program?
So we have a couple different designations through the Registered Apprenticeship Program. 2 of them are for software development. So one is software engineer and the other software developer. And then the third is QA. And so we will be helping people train for QA automation and QA test engineer roles. And so some folks will end up going down that path where they're really dedicated to making sure there's high quality inside of organizations. And then the other path will be for folks that are either working on the back end, front end, or full stack.
Do you know of any similar programs that are out there currently?
A very limited number. So the one that's most similar to the model and the approach that we've taken is called Tectonic, and they're out of Colorado. There's a program up in San Francisco that focuses on women and traditionally underrepresented folks. And so their program is kind of like ours, but obviously in Silicon Valley, it's gonna be a very different environment as compared to like San Diego.
Okay. And out of curiosity, how does the code school make money from this program?
We don't.
Really? Really? Okay.
I mean, I've invested a lot to go down this path of creating these opportunities for folks. And so at this stage, we do have the nonprofit foundation and we do have the LLC that has like a sustainable business model. But this is not a business where I'm looking for VC capital to come in and we're going to have this like hugely scalable product that we're going to just be able to crank out and be able to return, a 10x to someone's investment. Instead, this is really about building a bench of quality talent here in San Diego and allowing people that look kind of like me, maybe look a little bit like you, that are traditionally underrepresented in tech to have an opportunity to be in some of these organizations and help build products for people like us. I think it's important to have a similar engineering team as your customer base. And so that's the ultimate goal. It's not really never been my mission to become like the Bill Gates of the world. although I have nothing against money, right? But if I had that level of money, I would definitely still be focused on fixing our broken education system, because I feel like there's a lot of inequities and there's a lot of things broken, and COVID has exposed a lot of that. So ultimately, my goal is not to build something super scalable, but instead create a model that could be used all across the country, and everyone would embrace this model of, this is how we return to the way people have learned and like trained for jobs since like the dawn of man, working next to somebody that has a skill and learning from them. Apprenticeship's been around for a long time. We're not as good here in the US and even in California as our counterparts, for example, in Europe, where this is super common. So I was on a call this morning and I was talking to someone from Germany, and like he got it. He was like, oh yeah, like this is super common. Or in the UK, super common. But somehow in the United States, these new collar roles and this new collar training is just not as common. And so we want to like have it compete with the traditional pipeline, the college pipeline, and at least provide an alternative pathway for people that otherwise would not be able to get into these roles.
I can tell you why it's not common, because you're cutting out the universities.
This is
true.
Make money. This is true. Yeah,
that's tens or hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars you're getting rid of.
Yeah, it's broken. System's not working. Yeah. It's not working for everybody. It's working for some folks, but it's not working. And I think more and more people are, especially due to COVID, they're evaluating, does it make sense to invest this much in a CS degree? Now, I want to take a step back and just say, I'm not someone that believes that this is like a binary choice. I think a CS degree can complement the skills that people get when they come through a program like ours. So as an example, I think it would be a great opportunity for someone when they graduate from high school to go through an apprenticeship program, spend a year working and get some experience. And then when they transition into maybe, let's say, a larger employer, like let's say Apple, then try and take advantage of the Apple tuition reimbursement program and get your CS degree over the course of the next few years. You know, take one class a month or one class a semester or whatever, and get it done so that you have the best of both worlds. And you can pay cash for it. You don't have to take out a student loan, because you'll be a baller because you're making, you know, a bunch of money as a software engineer. So the other alternative could be, when you graduate from college with a CS degree, take a technical apprenticeship and spend a year getting some more coaching and getting your skill level up before you make the decision to go off into industry and start working at one of those big companies like Facebook, right? And so I don't think it's a either or. I think it's an all of the above approach that are going to work for each individual, for their career journey, for whatever's going to take for them to get to their ultimate destination.
Well, the universities are going to be happy to hear your perspective on that, Mike. You're not cutting them out anymore.
I'm not trying to cut them out.
It's an and, not an or kind of thing, I guess.
Yeah, and again, I think that's the kind of like innovation that we should see more of in the space. That model, there's a term for it, it's called cooperative education. A few schools in the country do it, where you basically like take a series of classes for like a semester, and then you go work in the industry for a while, and then you come back and you take more classes, and you kind of like flip-flop. So I don't know if any of your listeners are familiar with that or know some of the programs, but like Northeastern is famous for this. Drexel University is famous for this. So there are schools out there leveraging this, and I think it can work really, really well. Honestly, I don't know why it's not used more in the industry, other than we've all sort of like followed this like sheep. We're following this like, you got to go to high school, and then after high school, you got to go to college, you got to get a degree, you got to pick your first job, and you got to stay with it for a while. And I feel like that's not going to work for everybody. And we just have to be realistic that college is not going to work for everybody. Like I tripped out when my kid, we have a pretty good school district here where I live in San Diego, and my kid was told in kindergarten that every class was going to have a college that they would sort of like become fans of, and they were required to buy a t-shirt or a hat and wear that one day a week. Guess which one my son got?
I don't know.
He got Harvard. So his class decided that they were going to support Harvard. Harvard, huh? And I'm just like, settle down. I don't have Harvard type money. We're setting the bar way too high. Oh, like, wow. Let's just start with like whatever he wants to do in high school. Let's support that. If he wants to be a musician, great. Like, let's support that. Let's embrace that. Let's give him some time to, study music. Let's see if he wants to go to a great music school, or if he just wants to like be really good and get some experience. I didn't have that same upbringing. I was a parent of two school teachers. So there was only one path for me, and that was college,
Right.
right? And so I feel like more parents these days are realizing that it's not just a one path, and that sometimes you have many paths throughout your life. And so I think an apprenticeship could be a great opportunity for some people. And for other people, they might say, you know, I could make more money if I had the privilege of being able to go to college and then graduate from college and get your first job and make like $150,000, $200,000 up in Silicon Valley. That will work for some people, but it doesn't work for enough people that look like me.
Yeah, I bet those parents that are second guessing college, they're only doing it now because they saw that price tag and like, whoa, hold on now. This kid ain't even that smart. I'm not sure he can get through the 4 years of Harvard.
That's real. And it's like, you're setting me up in kindergarten by like, okay, I'm supposed to buy a t-shirt now and like get him all hyped on Harvard at like pre-first grade.
That's crazy, man. And then, you know, Harvard, I think they take in maybe less than 10% of people that apply. So you might be setting your kid up for some failure. But I've been wearing a t-shirt since I was 4 years old, damn it. I'm supposed to go to that school.
I mean, it's really good to have stretch goals, but like, I also think you should be pragmatic and like just getting them to understand that like college has a value and the college experience could be super fun and like really give you some skills that you're going to leverage for like the rest of your professional career. But it's also a big disappointment for folks that like can't measure up to that or just aren't sure when they're ready to graduate from high school. So I feel like we have to create better paths for those people because there's too many of them that just don't have that ability to like get that done. And you don't need that in order to be super successful in the software engineering field. It's just not required.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right about that, Mike. I think the whole push for college is just too much, man. Not everybody is supposed to go to college. I mean, if you're focused on something that's specific and you know a college degree is necessary to do that, then that's something you have to do. I mean, you can't become a doctor without having gone through a college first, or you know, you have to have gone through that to become, you know, to do that job. But for other things, it's not necessary. It's just something that people you've been ingrained that, just like you said, your kid since he was 4 years old, and this is what you have to do. It's college, or you don't go to college, you're a failure, and that's not cool. And it's not truth either.
Yeah, and then the other challenge with that mentality or mindset is that suddenly the employers start to believe that that's sort of like, that's the way that you demonstrate your capacity to work at a particular organization. And they use it as a screening mechanism. And so if you don't have that piece of paper, they're not likely to even have a conversation with you. And we're really trying to level the playing field and say, you know what, that paper doesn't determine whether or not someone has the skill set that's necessary to do that job. And more big CEOs, like the CEO of Apple, Tim Cook, have come out and said, we don't require college degrees anymore because it just doesn't align with the people that we see inside of organizations that are successful. I like to just identify talent, especially talent that's in the minority community, people underrepresented in tech traditionally, LGBTQ, women, and see if we can find more Black and Latinx individuals that have talent. And if they don't have the opportunity, give them that shot and sort of level the playing field so that they can get into one of those careers. Because these software careers, they can be game changers in terms of your capacity to help your family, your capacity to have a career path and not just a job.
So have you had any pushback from companies that you hope to partner with? And if so, how have you dealt with their concerns?
Okay, so yes, lots of people push back. And I think the only thing that we can do is try and provide like an educational opportunity for them to listen to the message and say, hey, when the time is right for you and your organization, we would love you to actually get an opportunity to talk to some of these candidates and to consider them for your roles. There are some companies that it's at a very high level. They've made a strategic decision that, for example, you must have a degree in order for you to get any job that has a title with the word engineering in it. And so that decision is beyond the individual hiring managers on locations here in San Diego. So it's out of their hands. So I can appreciate that and say, hey, I know it's not your fault. I'll just continue to work on getting my product out there and getting talent out into the ecosystem. and eventually it will make sense to you, make sense to your business. I would say in San Diego specifically, more often than not, businesses are not receptive. So I hear a lot of lip service lately about how they want diversity and inclusion and they're writing checks, but that's lip service.
All the press releases, man.
I don't get nearly enough people reaching out to me and saying, hey, like, we want to have a conversation. We want to see how can we get the most ROI out of our dollars. Instead, a lot of it is just like, let me just scratch a check to an organization and then like we've done our piece. And that's just not enough. There's just too many people that are unemployed right now, too many people struggling, and it's time for people to like really put your money where your mouth is,
Hey, I fully agree with you. I mean, if you go on LinkedIn any time of the day these days, that's pretty much all you hear, all you see. The diversity, equity, inclusion. We're committed to it. Put in all the hashtags in the post. And then,
Okay. Cool.
we good.
All right. So I need two things. I need jobs and I need money. So if you want to make a difference and you want to make an impact, those are the two ways that you can do that. And so far, we have been super fortunate in that San Diego does have those companies that are progressive and they get it and they understand that now's the time for them to actually like sort of change some of their practices and start dialing in on this issue. And so some have been doing it all along, right? And so as an operator of a code school formerly, I can appreciate that we tapped that network and we found lots of great employers. And I got people into companies like Trust and Will, Cody doing a great job over there, right? Mind Touch, the team over at Lytics. These are companies that for a long time have taken a chance on people that are in their early stages of their career and really done a great job of grooming these individuals. But other companies have been like, nah, that's okay. We only want senior engineers. And then once they spend a few months out there in the ecosystem, then their appetite sort of picks up and they're like, oh, maybe I could like poach them from this team over there, right? And so folks make it, and I get lots of folks eventually get to like Facebook and Apple, and I've got folks at Sony and Walmart Labs. And so lots of those companies will eventually end up having talent. So they got to get started somewhere in essence. And so I can really appreciate that a lot of local smaller startups have really stepped up and made a decision to say, we're going to invest in developing people and helping people in the early phases of their career. And not every company is set up or has the ability to make those decisions. Sometimes it just comes from the top and they're just like, you got to get stuff done. Here's your budget. You need to hire senior engineers and you got to produce under these deadlines. They just don't have the resources to be able to develop people.
One question I was just thinking about now. So, the majority, well, not majority, but companies, their job is to make money. So what if they come to you and say, like, yeah, your apprenticeship program sounds great, but the reason we want these senior people is because they won't need as much training. They can pretty much hit the ground running, and we don't have to basically babysit them or micromanage them as much as we would the apprentices from your program. How would you respond to that?
So we've tried to eliminate some of those objections and actually bake that into this product. So we consider ourselves a B2B business right now. So we provide skilled talent to companies that are looking for diverse software engineers. And so part of the way that we do that is we give them projects to work on, but when they're done in 12 months, they're ready to be on the floor and working these projects. While they're working with us under the apprenticeships, they're actually at our facility. So they're our employees. They don't belong to the company. And so our job as senior engineers on the teams with them is to make sure that they're not nagging the client. They're not going to them and asking them technical questions. They're asking us technical questions. And so the only time the company is going to get a call from us is going to be when I call the product team and say, hey, I need a decision on this product. We need to know, do you want a red widget or a white widget? That's your business call. That's your business decision. Once you let us know, I will then get the engineers back and get them doing what they need to do. So we've eliminated that sort of like objection that someone might say, I need to be able to not be interrupted. I need my senior engineers heads down. It's like, great, we got that. We got senior engineers on our side that will be mentoring these folks. But there's no like, I'm not going to candy code it and say, I can just push a button and there's like an easy button and you can immediately turn someone to a software engineer. It's going to take 12 months for them to be at a point where they're ready to kind of work semi-autonomously when we deliver them out into the like regular ecosystem. they need to be able to continue to learn and grow over time. So they will be early career developers, but they will have all the skill sets required to be able to do, contribute towards planning sessions and sprints, and they'll be able to take tickets and work them. And when they get stuck, they're going to need support. And so you will have some level of ongoing support, but trust me, when a software engineer has got a year under their belt, they can work pretty good autonomously. And while they're not as productive as a senior engineer, they can add tons of value to a team once they're at that 1 year threshold.
Got it. And this all sounds really interesting, Mike. Thank you for coming on the program and explaining it. How can people get in touch with you and find out more?
Absolutely. Hit us up on the website. It's SDCS. That stands for San Diego Code School, SDCS.io. Because, we're a cool startup, so we gotta have that IO, right?
IO, that's it. Well, everybody, that marks the end of another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. Check out the public speaking course called Teach the Geek to Speak. You can learn more about it at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Neil.